All right,
Good.
folks.
Given what Mr. Fielding had to say this morning, how dire a picture is it for the next 4-year budget, given the revenue issue?
I wouldn't use the word dire. I would say that the city administration is very on top of the financial situation. And as you've seen, there's been about $325 million in savings that they've identified that they've returned either as tax relief or utility rate reductions or reinvestment in community services. The challenge is that going forward, we've continually been increasing our revenue less than the rate of inflation plus population growth. And you can't do that forever. I've said that many, many times, that you can't always get blood from a stone. It's really important for us to go through continuous improvement work, and we need to continue to go through that continuous improvement work. The council also has to determine whether we have adequate revenues to fund the services that we think are important.
And it sounds like the new council will have an opportunity to sit down and actually say, this is core, this is core, this is core. Is that something that this council has done?
I mean, we do it continuously. One of the great things about our budgeting process, as interminable as it feels, is I can't think of any other government where every single manager comes live on TV and on the web and justifies their business plan and what they do in every line of their budget. So we do it constantly, but it's probably good organizational hygiene to take a step back every now and then and look at the big picture. And I think that that is what we'll have a chance to do in the creation of the next 4-year budget.
So do you think there will be difficult decisions for the next council?
There'll be difficult decisions for this council. We make difficult decisions every day. But I'll give you an example. As you know, we have a significant revenue shortfall in transit. And so the question is, do you cut back transit service? And how do you prevent from creating a vicious circle where you cut it back so much that fewer people take it and the revenue goes down even more? These are the kinds of tough decisions we got to make every day.
So what does living more modestly mean then?
Well, I think that we have clearly shown that our taxes in this city continue to be amongst the lowest of any large city in Canada, that we run pretty leanly and efficiently, but we've still got to do a better job. And, we have to continue to monitor things like, what is our construction productivity? As we've seen our construction costs go down on capital projects, are we remaining extremely productive? Are we making sure that people aren't getting bureaucratic runarounds when they need city services? Are we making sure that the delivery of those services is close to people where they live? These are all questions that we deal with consistently, but the framework of performance management and result-based accountability will help us unearth more of those areas that we can look at.
One of your colleagues mentioned in there about maybe not canceling projects but slowing down the completion rate. Is that a dangerous thing to do?
I think that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do in an economy like this, because that would imply that we would have to do more capital work when the economy is overheated and it's much more expensive. So it seems to me, as I've said many times, that if we have the money, interest rates are super low, construction costs are much lower than they were 2 years ago, and people are unemployed. And the infrastructure has to get built. So I say build it when the economy is slow rather than competing with the private sector when the economy is hot.
On this last item that we were just talking about,
The appointment to the Licensing and Community Standards Appeal Board, or the status of outstanding submissions?
Right before that, the submissions. I guess it's like, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the fact that you're getting these letters that sometimes are saying things that perhaps we don't want on the public record?
It is a bit of a solution in search of a problem, but that said, it's the right thing to do. As public discourse over the last few years has gotten much harder edged and much rougher, it really is important that we maintain an atmosphere of respect and decorum in the work that we do. So I don't see these rules being used very much. In fact, we even heard the law department say they couldn't think of an example of something that they would turn back. But having these guidelines in place, I think, is very helpful. And the other thing that I think needs to be done is the chair, whether it's me or another one of the councillors, really needs to make sure that we call people on bad and disrespectful behavior in the chambers. I try to do that now, but it's helpful to understand that that's something the council is looking for.
Just for people who don't watch council day in and day out, like how
Who
often
are those people?
How often do you have to do that? Where you
Not that often. There's a couple of frequent flyers where you have to remind them constantly. But the vast majority of people who take a day off and come to council are being very respectful when they're there because there's an issue that concerns them, the vast majority. And really the key is to make sure that the system works so those people can be heard. Because if those people feel shouted down or disrespected, then the system's not working in terms of gathering public input.
Is there a concern that, you'll have a letter that'll have some actual legitimate planning reasons, but then at the end it goes off the rails? Is there a concern about editing something when you get into the free speech issue?
Administration is not recommending that we do a redaction. Either it's in or it's not in, which means in a case like that, it would probably be in.
So do they have the balance right?
I think so. I think they actually worked pretty hard and very thoughtfully on this. It's a tough situation, but as with everything in Canada, balancing the community and individual rights is a constant experiment, and I think that the balance they've got here is probably about right.
And one of your colleagues came in to kind of say, my staff don't deal with anything that goes against our own code, and legal didn't think that was the way to go about it. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's probably right. And we find that if someone phones and they're being abusive, and you simply say, "Why don't you phone back when you're ready to be respectful?" People will phone back.